Paymon who?
Mata Heyday.
Paymon Lata Heyday. Who is he?
Never paid taxes in 30 years. Fought the U.S. tax court and won.
See, I believe our rights come from God, not from government.
Hello, my friends. This is Paymon Motahede, president of Freedom Law School. And in this presentation, I will show you the key to restoring honesty in government in America. Whether it's your local city, county, state, or the federal government, we have too much government and too often corrupt government. You will see the solution of, by, and for we the people in this presentation, and I'll do a follow-up parts coming up also. So it's going to be broken up, but it's going to be very exciting for you because you're going to feel so empowered because the topic of grand juries is something that most people do not know hardly anything about. Now, although freedomlawschool.org is a website, Freedom Law School, which I normally talk about, this is jurypower.org. The website, I have more information about grand juries, jurypower.org. So let's get on with this exciting topic. A grand jury, as Britannica, dictionary tells us, is an Anglo-American law group that examines accusations against persons charged with a crime. And if the evidence warrants, makes formal charges on which the accused person are later tried, okay? Through the grand jury, laypersons participate in bringing suspects to trial. Okay, that's a nice little short overview, but I want to give you guys more. Here's Wikipedia about grand juries, okay? It tells us that the grand jurors in the United States are groups of citizens empowered by the United States federal or state law to conduct legal proceedings, chiefly investigating potential criminal conduct, okay, and determining whether criminal charges should be brought. It's the same thing, okay? However, a little bit more added here. Like the jury system as a whole, grand juries originate in England and spread throughout the colonies of the British Empire as part of the English common law system. Today, the United States is one of only two jurisdictions, two countries, okay, on earth, okay, along with Liberia in Africa, that continues to use the grand jury to screen criminal indictments. That's right. Most of the world doesn't have any such thing. It's very unique, basically, to America. One of the things that makes America so special is the jury system, and grand jury and regular trial or petit jury are the two halves of the jury system. Okay, let's go on. Wikipedia tells us more information that the federal government is required to use grand juries for all felonies, which are serious crimes, though not misdemeanors, which are minor crimes, by the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution, and all states can use them, but only half actually do. Okay, so half of the states in America do have a grand jury system, about half do not have one anymore, sadly, okay, because for different reasons. About history of it, here's a little bit more background. In early decades of the United States, grand juries played a major role in public matters. In the late 18th century, colonial, civil, criminal, and grand juries played major roles in checking the power of the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. Oh, I bet you didn't know that, did you? Yeah, that's pretty major power they had, okay, checking the power of executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. Okay, so you see now where it's going. This is a much more powerful institution than you realized until now. The American grand jury was also indispensable to the American Revolution by challenging the crown, the king, and the Parliament of England, including by indicting British soldiers. That's right. King's soldiers were indicted, accused of crimes, okay, and refusing to indict people who criticize the crown, the King of England, okay? Opposing boycotts and call for support of the war after the Declaration of Independence. Wow! Pretty serious powers they've exercised. And I'll tell you again, they still have those awesome powers today if they know about it, which they don't. And it's my job and your job to educate ourselves and share it with our fellow Americans who one day may be potential grand jurors. Okay? Here is more. Any citizen could bring the matter before the grand jury directly from a public work that needed repair to delinquent conduct of the public official to complain of a crime, and grand jurors could conduct their own investigations. Now, check out this language. It sounds like a past tense, like they could do that, suggests that maybe they can not do that anymore. Oh no, they still have those powers. They just don't teach it to us in the public school system, in government schools. We don't know about these things. I searched this up almost 30 years ago and put the Jury Power website with this information like this on there to educate American people about the power we have to clean up government, delinquent conduct of public official to complain of a crime, especially by government officials. So here's a little bit more historical background on this from the constitution.congress.gov. The Fifth Amendment, which I read to you earlier, says no person, meaning by federal government, shall be held to answer for capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury. Okay? That's the Fifth Amendment part that you guys heard about is there. Okay? And it also tells us that grand jurors were selected from the body of the people. That's right, among the people, and their work was not hampered by original procedural evidential rules. In fact, grand jurors could act on their own knowledge and were free to make their presentments or indictments on such information as they deemed satisfactory. That's right. Grand jurors could act on their own knowledge. Guess what? They still do. They're not dependent on the judge or the government prosecutor, U.S. attorney, or district attorney. They are independent of all of them, as you shall see some more on this topic. Okay. Now, and the grand jury acquired an independence in England and freed from control by the crown and judges. Yep. Its adoption of our Constitution was as a sole method for preferring charges in serious criminal cases shows the high place it held as an instrument of justice. It really does. The forgotten grand jury is very important to justice in our American system of law, which is unique and the best on earth. Okay? So here we go on the federal grand jury, a little bit more at congress.gov. Tells us that as a sword of justice enjoys virtually unfettered power to secretly investigate the mere possibility that federal laws may have been broken, okay? Yet it remains a potential shield, for it must give its approval before anyone may be brought to trial unwillingly for a serious federal crime. And again, in the background, this is a refresher. The grand jury dates back to centuries, to William the Conqueror, way back, about 1,000 years ago in England. And now, here's interesting language that you use here in this Congress.gov. The attorney for the government will ordinarily arrange for the appearance of witnesses before the grand jury, will suggest the order in which they should be called, and will take part in questioning them. The grand jury most often returns to the prosecutor for legal advice and to draft most indictments, which grand jury returns. Now, being this, you assume that's the way it works. It has to be this way? No. Look at the terms. It's not always. It says the government will ordinarily arrange for appearance of witnesses. Not always, only ordinarily. So it's not necessary for the Attorney for Government to arrange appearance of witnesses. The grand jury can and does act on its own if it knows they can do that, okay? Also, and the government lawyer will suggest the order in which they should be called the witnesses. Not require or dictate, but suggest. At the end, it's the grand jury's choice to have the order of the witnesses, okay? And the grand jury, most often, that's the key again, most often, but not always, turns to the prosecutor for legal advice. They don't have to. They can get the legal advice from anywhere they want on their own or not, or reject the government lawyer's advice if they want to. Now, and then most indictments, the government lawyer draft most of the complaint indictments. Again, most, but not all. The grand jury in itself can write out the indictment. Okay, charge someone with a crime. They don't need the government lawyer at all. They just have the system there for you. In case you want to use it, it's totally up to grand jury. Grand jury is the boss. Remember that. Okay? Let's go on now to this case. Okay? United States versus John Williams. Okay? This is from a U.S. Supreme Court. This case was in 1992. And Justice Scalia wrote the majority opinion of this case. Okay, and it's very, very good. It tells you so much about grand juries that are dead on right. You'll love this thing, okay? Okay. It starts saying that because the grand jury is an institution separate from the court, separate, it is not a part of the court. Therefore, court has no power over it. Think about that, okay? Over whose function the courts do not preside, right? We think it's clear that as a general matter, at least, no such supervisory judicial authority exists, and that the disclosure rule applied here exceeded the circuit for authority. Anyhow, the bottom line is, it is not a part of the judiciary, and the judiciary has no such supervisory authority over the grand jury. That is the key thing for you guys to take home from that. It's completely independent of the courts, okay? And again, they talk about the fact that it's rooted in long centuries of Anglo-American history, right? This is now well known if you know about grand juries. And grand jury belongs to no branch of the institutional government, serving as a kind of buffer or referee between the government and the people. Wow! It belongs neither to the executive branch, legislative branch, or the judicial branch. Practically a fourth branch of the government is the jury system. Okay? And again, although the grand jury normally operates, of course, in the courthouse and under judicial auspices, its institutional relationship with the judicial branch has traditionally been, so to speak, at arm's length. That's right, separate, at arm's length. Okay? Again, this is all reminding everybody the grand jury is a separate, independent of the judges and the government, period. The prosecutors, they don't have no power over the grand jury either, okay? We're not taught about these things in the school system. And even in this setting, however, we have insisted that the grand jury will remain free to pursue its investigations unhindered by external influence or supervision by anybody, even the government lawyers, government prosecutors, U.S. attorney, the district attorney, okay? So long as it does not trench upon the legitimate rights of any witness that is called before it. That's all, okay? So it's unhindered by or influence, or even influence, or supervision by any government or authority whatsoever. What holds the grand jurors back from exercising all this is their ignorance. They don't know. That's the problem we have to solve by you studying this stuff and you sharing with everybody you know to take back America, as I'll tell you more in coming up now. Let's go next. The grand jury's functional independence from the judicial branch is evident both in the scope of its power to investigate criminal wrongdoings and in the manner in which that power is exercised. That's right. It's just completely independent of government, authorities of any kind. And here is more. The grand jury can investigate merely on suspicion that the law is being violated, or even because it wants assurance that it is not. That's right. They can investigate anything and anybody that they want. Okay? The grand jury, again, requires no authorization from its constituting court to initiate an investigation. Again, the grand jury can investigate anybody or anything they want, of course, within their jurisdiction, which is the county or the federal district they sit in. Okay? And in its day-to-day functioning, the grand jury generally operates without the interference of a presiding judge. Again, this is kind of repetition, but Justice Scalia wanted to make sure you know grand jury is a whole different, separate institution. Okay? Has its own powers, awesome powers, that goes back over 1,000 years in English common law tradition America still has. And recognizing this tradition of independence, we have said that the Fifth Amendment, constitutional guarantees, presupposes an investigative body acting independently of either prosecuting attorney or the judge. Boom, there it is. You see it for yourself. Supreme Court says what? That the grand jury operates, right, independently of either the prosecuting attorney or the judge. Right? Take that to the bank, everybody. Because that's how the system works. We just didn't know that you use so the problem is that Americans are not taught about this in a public school system. When they call them for grand jury, they just sit there like, I don't know what to do here. I'm impressed by the big building and formality and the power and government and the law and the judge and government prosecutor. I don't know what's going on here, what to do. I was not taught anything about this when I went to school, so I'll just listen and do whatever the judge or government lawyer guides me, because I know nothing from nothing. And that's the problem. If the grand jurors knew their power and their duty and independence, they would not be mere handmaids of the government prosecutors, which they unfortunately most often these days are. Okay? And we could clean up government, because they could turn around, indict the government prosecutor, indict the judge, indict anybody, even the President of the United States. As you see, they've done that, right? Investigate anybody. No one's above the law before the grand jury to indict, right? Let's go a little bit further on that. Okay. Requiring the prosecutor to present exculpatory. Okay, that doesn't matter this one. Okay, let's go to this one. Now, here it is, folks. The place to go is jurypower.org for more education on this topic. That's right. I put all this stuff together in 1997 to educate Americans about the power of grand juries. They can and should investigate corruption in government first, if they knew they had such awesome powers. They just don't know. Okay? So in this presentation, my key thing was to let you guys know that the grand juries do have that power. And basically, you have every right, every duty to contact the grand jurors and tell them about the crime committed by anybody on the street or corrupt government officials. That's right. It's all guaranteed by your First Amendment right to free speech, to associate, to assemble, to publish, and most importantly, petition the government for redress of your grievances. That's right. You believe the government official is corrupt, you have the right to petition a grand jury. Say, hey, look at this grand jury. Look what they're doing. Okay? And stop them. Now, no one's suggesting you anybody lie to the grand jury. You should always tell the truth. If you call before the grand jury, you can and should answer the question gratefully, truthfully. Absolutely. No question about that. Don't lie. That's a crime. You can go to prison for lying under oath, which is called perjury. However, that does not stop you from presenting additional or better information about government crimes. In the part 2, I will give you examples of how I try to do those things myself, and I almost succeeded in getting grand juries to indict corrupt government officials. So in part 2, I'll cover those examples and what you can do a little bit more concretely. We can actually get these guys, get these crooks, okay? But for right now, I just want you to know the website for education is jurypower.org, okay? And when you go to jurypower.org, let me make this a little bit small so you guys see it, okay? Here on the Grand Jury Power, you see several articles. Right now, everything's pretty much here, okay? On the Grand Jury Power thing. But I'm going to put more stuff on this website. Check on it. I'm going to improve on this website as time goes on, okay? And there's several articles on there. All these months, I'm going to bring a little bit of them up there. And when I wrote this, I wrote it in California, based on California law, trying to go after a couple of crooked California judges. That's what led me to this whole quest. So I'm going to read a little bit for you guys from these, what I did back there, okay? So here we go. Let me see. Let me get to here part. Okay, there's several. Okay, here's a California case of People versus Coleman in 1948. Okay, the court said one of the statutory duties of the district attorney, the government prosecutor, is to draw indictments, attend before and give advice to the grand jury whenever cases are presented to it for their consideration. However, there is no requirement, however, that there's a duty of the grand jury to request or accept that advice. Wow, that's right. Again, this is well-recognized principles of law. The grand jury is independent, though they don't have to request or even accept the government prosecutor's advice at all, okay? Okay, so there's so much in these good articles. I'm going to educate you more about all this. Grand juries have indicted judges. Here, People versus Hardeman in 1966, and People versus Martin. Okay, 2 cases where the grand juries indicted judges for conspiracy to obstruct and pervert justice. Oh boy, that's going to be one of the most common crimes that corrupt government officials do. They conspire together to obstruct or pervert justice, don't they? Yeah. So, grand jury can come in and clean up, indict the government prosecutor, the judge, legislators, and his crooks acting together. It's a grand jury's job to accuse them, put them before a jury trial to stop all these crooks from what they're doing. Okay? So, go to jurypower.org, folks, our website, okay, and educate yourself further on these issues. But remember, next week, I'll give you the good, juicy stuff. The best stuff, how I actually put this stuff to use, how I tried to do it. I got almost there. And how we can do it now, especially if you're a freedom law school student. That's right. Especially, or not. You can be just someone go through our 7 steps to free yourself of the IRS deception, fear, robbery, and slavery. Okay? And just on our website, freedomlawschool.org. And you've gone through the 5 steps at least, 1 through 5. Step 5, those petitions are extremely important on our First Amendment. Okay? We want to take those before the grand juries. That's right. It's your right, it's your duty to expose these criminals to the grand jurors. I'll call for you next week. It's so exciting. I can't wait to share it with you. But remember, until then, share our website, freedomlawschool.org, with anybody you know out there. Okay? Share the jurypower.org. Okay? Okay? I got the articles about judges are not above the law. Grand jury power exposed. Grand jury power to charge corrupt government, criminal elected officials is a key to restoring honest government. Okay? All these things, read them on our website, okay? And get them out to everybody you know out there to restore freedom. And I'm going to show you this. Look at this. Bill Clinton, when he was president, he's on YouTube. He was required to testify before the grand jury, and he did. They did by video, but nonetheless, even the sitting president of the United States, Bill Clinton, was not immune. As you know, right now, Donald Trump is right now waiting. He was indicted by the Georgia grand jury, okay? And we'll see where it goes. Probably nowhere, but they did indict him. Federal grand jury indicted him with the federal crimes, by the corrupt, with the Jim Smith, indicted him in Washington, D.C., right? So, New York, they indicted and convicted Trump, indicted him with the grand jury. Okay, no one's above the law. We are turning around on these crooked government officials with indictment power should be forced on to chain them, for them to learn a lesson and do not mess with American people. Okay, Ronna James Comey, former head of FBI, he was recently indicted, as you heard on the news, by the federal grand jury. Okay, so this is serious business, folks, and it's serious answer solutions for us to be free. So with that, I give you my love. I invite you to seek the truth, and the truth shall set you free at freedomlawschool.org and jurypower.org.